Their homeworld doesn't exist anymore, not because we destroyed it, but because we remembered. The nebula stretched like a wound across the void, crimson and ash gray, flickering with the last photons of an annihilated sun. Round it drifted a graveyard of shattered holes and fused alien bone. And there, watching silently from the bridge of a rust-scarred human relic, stood Ava Roslin, a name forgotten by most, but not by the ones who survived. The Archangel was barely holding together one of the last functioning vessels of the 7th Exodus Fleet, her hull grown with age, scavenged tech, and wounds that had never been repaired. It was more ghost than warship, but to Ava, it was home, a floating tomb that refused to die. "Report," she said, voice low. "Same as yesterday," murmured Ensign Kale. "Radiation spikes. No power signatures. Whatever hit them didn't. Just kill." It erased. Ava's jaw clenched. She already knew that. She could feel it in her bones. The way silence settled like dust. The way the stars avoided this part of the galaxy. They weren't just near a battlefield. They were in the aftermath of vengeance. And it was human vengeance. She turned to the observation glass. Beyond it, a planet-sized crater glowed faintly, with radioactive embers, no moons, no satellites, no survivors. "Is this it?" Kale whispered. "Is this the one?" Ava nodded once. This was their capital. Kale's face turned pale. He had been born after the War of Silences, raised on rumors, not memories, but Ava had lived it. The galaxy never named the species. That made humans angry. Not anymore. Not in textbooks. Not in galactic archives. Even their allies refused to utter it. They had become a ghost story, a warning. Because the last time humanity was truly furious, the stars themselves bore the scar. 70 years ago, the Earth Compact had become a footnote in the Galactic Accord, tolerated, mocked, underestimated. After centuries of restraint, after diplomacy and absorption into the bureaucratic sprawl of the Accord, humanity had faded into near irrelevance, a minor race, fragile, noisy, sentimental. Until the Vrixtel ascendancy, no one expected them to target humans. No one thought Earth was still worth anything. The Vrixtel were conquerors of fire and void, shrouded in psychic opacity, armed with a fleet grown in starlight for 10,000 years. They called their campaign the necessary culling, and humanity was just first. Earth's fall came. Swift, orbital burns, atmospheric scarring, oceans boiled to vapor. Earth wasn't glassed. It was hollowed, but Earth wasn't the end. Not for Ava, not for the ones who crawled from the fire. She had been 12 when the Vrixtel took her colony. She still heard her mother's last scream over the emergency broadcast. She remembered the synthetic silence after. No birds, no wind, just static snowing through the air like ash. They called it pacification. They called it containment. Ava called it the end of pretending. She rose fast in the resistance, not because she was brave, but because there was no one else left. She learned to weld, fly, patch bleeding organs, hack alien systems, and kill with weapons not meant for human hands. She became captain before she could legally vote. Not that Earth's laws meant anything anymore. Humanity fractured across. The stars hunted and scattered, but they endured and they remembered. On the Archangel's lower decks, survivors were gathering, elders who wore oxygen masks, children raised in zero-G with bones too fragile for planets, soldiers with cybernetic limbs welded in basement clinics. They came not because of orders, but because of what this system meant. The place where it ended, the place where humanity stopped running. Atmospheric scans complete. Kale said, voice shaking, no signs of life, not even microbial. Ava touched the bulkhead wall. It still bore the names of the lost, carved in every language Earth had once spoken. Good, she said quietly, let them stay forgotten. In the silence of the command deck, something flickered, a signal, weak, obscured by interference. Ava turned sharply. Was that? Kale was already on it, picking up a residual data spike. Wait, it's not Vrixtel, it's ours. Human code, really old. Ava leaned in. The coordinates streamed across the console, pulsing faintly. Buried beneath the ash of a dead empire, something still lived. She stared at the readout. A vault, an origin beacon. No, a message left behind at ground zero. The words scrawled across the transmission in ancient Terran standard. This was not vengeance. This was memory. Ava stepped back. Her hands trembled. For the first time in decades, She felt fear, because if this survived, someone else might have, too, and if the galaxy found it, they'll remember. She whispered, her eyes narrowed, and they'll try to bury it again. We didn't want war. We wanted silence, but they mistook that silence for mercy. The Archangel descended into the scorched atmosphere like a falling prayer. Hull groaning as atmospheric drag wrapped the ship in fire. Ava stood at the forward viewport, eyes unblinking as the ruins of the Vrixtel capital drew closer. A blackened crater spanning half the continent. Veins of molten glass streaked with the outlines of cities that had once reached into the stratosphere. This was not war. This was erasure, and somewhere down there, beneath 100 meters of fused ruin, was a message humanity had left behind. A warning, a truth they were never meant to reclaim. Deploying seismic drill, Kale said, sweat glistening on his temple, reading alloyed shielding, almost certainly human constructed. Coordinates matched the old Exodus era encoding. Ava didn't reply. She remembered that code. It had been embedded into every survival pod launched after Earth fell, hidden in nursery rhymes, burned into skin, passed like scripture through whispers and dying breaths. When the stars forget, U.S. will remember. When they erase our names, we'll carve them deeper. And when they break our home, we'll teach them what home truly means. The tremor of the drill shook the bridge, but Ava stood still. She was staring at the shape beneath the ash. The vault was huge, angular, too perfect to be natural. Not a shelter, not a weapon, a monument. To rage, to loss, to the one species the Vrixtel couldn't break. Captain, Kale said softly, do you think this is wise? If the Accord finds out we reopen the vault, they won't. Ava cut him off. They buried this world, paid mercenaries to guard the borders, enforce silence across the archives. This place isn't on any map anymore. Because they're afraid. No, she said, because they think it's over. But it wasn't. As the drill pierced the final layer of composite alloy, a pulse echoed up through the Archangel systems, a surge of human quantum encoding. The lights flickered, Kale cursed and stabilized the power flow, and then, a voice, crackling, ancient, a whisper made of grief and flame. If you found this, then they've forgotten. But we haven't. It was a woman's voice, steady, fierce, familiar. Ava froze. It was Commander Alira Voss, humanity's last war marshal, the one who had vanished after the fall of the 5th Sanctuary Fleet. She was presumed dead by everyone, but her voice still echoed through the black. This message is for us, for the ones who remember the screams, the fire, the way the stars turned their backs while the Vrixtel tore it from under our feet. We were not vengeful. We were grieving, but they made us choose. Kale stepped away from the console, his hands shaking. This changes everything. He breathed. If this recording reaches Accord space, they'll silence us again. Ava said, then why come here? Why now? She turned, and for the first time since Kale had met her, her voice cracked. Because the Vrixtel aren't all dead. The silence hit like a missile. Kale stared at her. That's not possible. The Accord confirmed full annihilation, planetary sterilization. Every system they held is dark. Not every system, she said. She tapped a panel on her arm, revealing a star chart. One node pulsed, faint and distant, a rogue world orbiting a failed star. 12 cycles ago, a deep-range listening array caught a ping, organic, pattern, and unmistakably Vrixtel. Kale paled. That would mean they survived, Ava said coldly. A remnant, maybe just a few, but enough. He swallowed hard. What do we do? Ava stared down at the pulsing vault below, still glowing with the heat of old memory. We remind them why their name isn't spoken anymore. Far above, in a void beyond the atmosphere, a listening drone blinked to life. It was not human. It belonged to the Galactic Accord Oversight Council, a silent, watchful AI construct hidden in the orbital debris field for the last 70 years. Programmed to detect certain frequencies, and one of them had just been triggered. Vrixtel code, human war memory, red-listed protocol, resurgence level threat. Within seconds, a compressed quantum signal burst outward toward the Accords. Inner core, the humans had remembered. The vault was open, and silence would no longer hold. Back aboard the Archangel, the vault's entry platform hissed open. Inside, dim blue lights shimmered along carbon steel walls, displaying relics that had not seen starlight in generations. Fragments of human war banners, dog tags, pages from burnt books, a shrine of what had been lost, and at its center, a hologram flickered to life. Alira Voss stood tall, wrapped in the scorched armor of the last fleet. They will call us monsters. They will say we went afar, but they never saw what we saw, never felt what it was like to lose everything and be told to forgive. Kale turned to Ava. Haunted. This isn't just a message, he said. Ava nodded. It's a reawakening, because the last time humanity was angry, they erased a species. And now, the galaxy was beginning to remember why. They didn't fear our weapons. They feared that we still felt love. After everything they did, the vault's chamber pulsed with pale, artificial light. Around Ava, the air thrummed with buried rage, with memory so heavy at bedtime. The hologram of Commander Alira Voss continued to speak, not as a call to arms, but as a monument to the moment humanity changed. This isn't a war log. It's a mirror. If you stand here now, it means the Accord has failed to keep us silent. And if they fail, then it's time to finish what we began. Ava stepped forward. The projection shimmered, then shifted to data, coordinates, supply caches, archive nodes, resistance protocols long believed erased. This wasn't just a shrine. It was a blueprint, a map of the fire that nearly consumed the galaxy and the kindling that remained. Kale swallowed. She planned this. Even as the Vrixtel burned, she planned for another rise. Because she knew the Accord, Ava said, they didn't fear the war. They feared that someone would remember it. The vault's central platform opened with a hiss. Inside was a box, obsidian black, lined with star metal edges. Still warm after 70 years. Ava reached out, her gloved fingers trembling. Inside was a single item, a coded relay key, the Voss beacon, a wartime signal node banned under galactic law, capable of activating hidden resistance networks across 6 sectors. It had only ever been used once, in the final hour before Earth's last fleet. Struck back, she held it like a relic, like a weapon carved from grief. What are you going to do? Kale asked. She turned to him, and for the first time, her eyes weren't full of shadows. They burned. Call them back, across the spiral arms of the galaxy. In scrapyard stations and sealed asteroid bunkers, something stirred, a deep space. Transmitter flickered on in the ruins of Cherburon Delta, the last hidden stronghold of the Terran resistance. On Ganyu Prime, a human smuggler named Idris Harlan looked up from a half-assembled fusion core and whispered, that can't be real. And on Kirill Station, deep within Accord space, Alara Ken, a human diplomat exiled for speaking to boldly, woke from her sleep clutching her chest. Heart racing, eyes wet. The beacon's tone had found them. The Voss signal had returned. And that meant one thing. Humanity was rising again. But the spark did not go unnoticed. In the core hall of the Accord's inner ring, the Oversight Council convened in panic. Species that had once watched Earth burn now stared at each other in cold fear. The Insecto Renari, the crystalline Ilthkai, the towering Lothram. For decades, they had written humanity off as fractured, wandering ghosts of a once bold species. But ghosts don't send war beacons. Ghosts don't awaken memory vaults. The Vrixtel had taught them that. They breached a dead zone. His Chancellor Karvek of the Ilthkai. It's not a coincidence. We buried that world with purpose. The Lothran growled. If they return, they won't. Came a new voice, cold, synthetic, and terrifyingly calm. A form emerged into the chamber, metal-wrapped and haloed with dark light. The Warden of Memory, a construct built to keep humanity's past sealed beneath forbidden algorithms. They remembered. The Warden said, now we must ensure. They don't inspire. Activate the suppressors. Karvik snapped. Black out the systems. Detain any suspected sympathizers. Cut the soul remnants off from the net. They'll resist, said another voice, trembling. The Warden of Memory turned his glowing eyes toward them. Then let them remember why they stopped the first time. But Ava was already a step ahead. The Archangel climbed back into the void, vault sealed behind them, the beacon pulsing in her hands. It was ancient, yes, but the resistance network it was tied to was not dead, only sleeping. And humanity had always been good at waking up. She sent the first code burst to Cherburon, then another to the Eos Drift, a third to the Cradle Line, a lost carrier station that had disappeared into the Fellis Rift nearly 50 years ago. Each one was a lit match. Each one said, we are not broken. We are not lost. We are not done. Join us. 3 days later, in a mining colony on Covra 4, A shipment convoy failed to report in. 6 hours after that, an automated defense array. In Accord space went dark. Human-coded virus detected. Within a week, whispers echoed in markets and docking bays. The Terrans are moving again. They found the vault. The girl from the Exodus is alive. And somewhere, hidden in the burning bones of a dead system, Eva Roslin received her first reply. A single, silent message. We've been waiting. Alara Ken. Diplomatic corps exiled. Kale stared at the growing list of activations. Mouth open. This is an army. No, Eva said, her voice steel. Not yet, right now. We're a memory, a warning. She turned to the viewplate, watching the stars shift. Each one a possible ally or a trap. But soon, we'll be a storm, because the galaxy forgot what humans could do when united. And now, it would remember. They tried to seal the past away, but the past was human, and we don't stay buried. They came for Alara Khan in the dead of night. No trial, no accusation, just silent boots and a neural net cast over her mind like a shroud. The Accord, suppression corps, 12 black-armored agents with no emblems, no names. They called her a containment variable, but Alara had been waiting. Before they could lift her from her bunk, she whispered a single word through the cortical implant still hidden in her molar, Archangel, and the world exploded. Back aboard the Archangel, Eva watched the holofeed flicker with static, then bloom with a burst of light as Alara's location went red. Intercepted, Kale said grimly. They knew she was in contact. That was fast. Eva narrowed her eyes. To fast. Another signal burst, short, encrypted. Not from Alara, from her implant. Status, compromised. Intentional, beacon handoff, secured. Secondary activation, in motion. Message, I held long enough. Go. EK Eva closed her eyes. Alara Ken was gone, but she'd handed off the message first, probably to a civilian, a dock worker, anyone human enough to understand the stakes. It was what they'd trained for during the silent years. Pass it. Bury it. Let the ember live. She knew what she was doing, Eva said. She knew they'd kill her, Kale muttered. No, Eva said softly. She knew they'd notice her, and now they had. The Warden of Memory stood alone in a quantum thought chamber, communing with 17 separate Accord intelligence nodes. The news was worse than feared. The Voss beacon had activated 6 lost cells, data corruption in suppression archives, disobedience blooming in former Terran sectors, civilian riots, whispers of vengeance. The galaxy was tilting. They spread like bacteria, hissed the Renarie liaison. Why didn't you finish them after Earth? The Warden turned, expressionless. Because you made them a myth. Because you were afraid of a martyr. You wanted a hushed extinction, and now you have a rising. Crush them, the Lotharian growled. Kill the captains. Blocked air. Signals. It's too late for silence. The Warden replied, we must make an example. The response came swift and brutal on Orphan Station. A civilian research post rumored to harbor Terran refugees. A Lotharian battleship dropped. A kinetic rod from orbit. A tungsten spike half the size of a skyscraper. No warning. No survivors. 1,000 lives turned to plasma in a second. The message was clear. Speak of the past, and you'll join it. Eva watched the sensor feed in silence. The image looped again and again. The rod falling. The station. Flaring. The stars turning red. Kale sat beside her, fist clenched. We're not ready for war. No. Eva said, but we can't do nothing. She turned to him, eyes hollowed by fury and memory. I want you to leak it. He blinked. What? The footage, the audio, everything. Orphan was a science post. There were children on that station, grandmothers, artists. You think. The galaxy won't care. Kale hesitated. The galaxy chose the Accord after it fell. No. Eva said, the galaxy chose safety, but safety bought with silence is cowardice. Her voice dropped, and humans are done being quiet. The leak hit the outer rings first. Within 3 hours, 7 alien networks had picked up the feed. Within 6, 100,000 ships in the Accord fringe had seen it. Station destroyed. Innocent screams, the burning letters. You will forget Earth or share its fate. But it wasn't the horror that spread. It was the rage in a fuel rig outside the Malus Divide. A half-human freighter captain threw his Accord badge into the void and broadcast a single word. Never again. On a trade hub near the Arkan Reach, a merchant offered food to a hidden Terran family and died shielding them. When the suppression cores came, and in the mining belts of Zorth 9, an old woman tore open her sealed vault and retrieved her dead son's armor. He had died during the fall. Now, she would carry his fight. Aboard the Archangel, Eva stood before her crew, the bridge packed with humans who had never known Earth, pilots, engineers, children of a burned world. "We lost the first war," she said, "because we believed we could be forgiven." She held up the Voss beacon, its pulse like a heartbeat. "But now, they fear what we remember. They're killing civilians to scare us. They're silencing survivors to erase the truth." She stepped forward, voice rising. "But they forgot one thing," her hands clenched around the beacon. "We don't forget. We don't bow. We don't break." Her voice became a war cry. "We are Terran. We are flame. And we are coming back." The bridge roared. But far away, the last of the Vrixtel listened. From the shadows of a dying world, they watched the galaxy awaken, and the eldest of them, hidden beneath a shell of scars and cybernetic bone, whispered in his native tongue, "They still remember. Then perhaps we were not wrong to fear them." His hand brushed an old relic, something taken from a battlefield long ago, a piece of Earth's final defense system, still pulsing, still angry, still human. "They erased our skies, thinking that would blind us. But humans never needed stars to find their way home." The Archangel coasted on silent engines through the debris field of the Soul Grave. Once Earth's defensive ring, now a belt of shattered metal and scorched bone orbiting nothing. Below, Earth itself was a black sphere, lifeless, crusted with carbon glass and lingering radiation. Even now, Ava Roslin could feel it. "The gravity of memory. This is where it ended," Kale whispered. Beside her, and maybe where it should have stayed, she didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on a set of coordinates drawn from the Voss beacon, numbers, etched into Alira's final transmission, a location not found in any Accord archive, not marked on any map. She brought the Archangel into position. The scanners blinked, then howled. A cloaked structure revealed itself from behind a decayed moon fragment. Vast, angular, impossible. "Signal match, Terran frequency, Omega class." Kale leaned forward. That's Earth core." Ava nodded once. The last fail-safe Earth core was humanity's myth, the rumored final fallback for Project Exodus, a fortress station, buried so deep in gravity wells and censored dead zones it was said to exist only in grief-fueled legend. And now, it opened for her, inside Earth core. The lights flickered to life as if they'd simply been waiting for a heartbeat to echo again. Long-dead corridors breathed dust and forgotten songs. Cold AI cores reawakened, but did not speak. They listened. And then, deep in the command cathedral, Ava found it, a sarcophagus of obsidian alloy and quantum glass, a sealed human figure inside, preserved by stasis, clutching the data shard embedded in his chest. The nameplate, Commander Dane Thorn Terrastrek lead status. I assumed she didn't cry. Not for him. Not yet. Instead, she pulled the shard from his armor, slid it into the core's ancient console, and watched the final file of Earth's war strategy come alive. Commander Thorn's voice filled the chamber, raspy, quiet, stained with ash. "If you're hearing this, then they erased us, but not everything. Good. I couldn't save Earth. But maybe I saved what mattered. The last directive. Don't avenge us. Outlive them. But if the Accord comes for the survivors, then burn every lie they built, and give them a reason to fear humans again." Data flooded the screens, tactical archives, decrypted comms, evidence of war crimes the Accord buried, names of council members who orchestrated the fall and reshaped the narrative. This wasn't just a cache, it was the truth. Ava turned to Kale. "If we leak this, it won't spark protest. It'll spark open rebellion." Kale stared at the holograms. "Are you ready to start another war?" She looked at the sarcophagus again. "No, I'm ready to finish the first one." The leak detonated across the galactic net like a silent bomb. The Accord's lie, a term whispered for generations, now had proof. Visual feeds of scorched Earth, audio logs of the Terran. Surrender refused, recorded orders, make them extinct. The idea of them must die too. Entire species that had voted for peace now saw the truth. Humanity hadn't been broken in war. They had been assassinated in secret, and still, some of them lived. Riots ignited in neutral systems. Refugees wearing old Terran emblems appeared in open defiance. At this time, they were not alone. Alien sympathizers, those who remembered. The Terran kindness during the outbreak wars, the food shipments from Earth, The engineers who rebuilt flood cities, the songs shared in void bar cantinas, stood beside them. The Terran diaspora wasn't a ghost anymore. It was a signal fire, and entire systems began to turn. The Accord panicked. Deployments tripled. Martial law spread. The Warden of Memory authorized Directive Zero, complete neural suppression of human-aligned populations. But the truth could not be silenced, because truth has a face now. And it was Ava Roslin, in a remote desert on Selenix. A team of child scavengers stumbled across a hidden vault buried beneath broken obsidian rock. Inside was a long-dormant AI guardian named Solus, left behind by a Terran engineer who once tried to rebuild the atmosphere there. Solus had watched the stars turn cold, waiting for a voice print. One of the children, a half-human girl named Minna, activated it by accident. The AI's first words were, "Welcome home, child of Earth. I'd have waited so long." Solus connected to the net and saw Ava's broadcast. "I will assist her," Solus declared. "She carries the last directive." Elsewhere, in a forgotten derelict drifting near the Haze Nebula, Idris Harlan, now operating under the call sign Ashwake, picked up the leak. He didn't hesitate. He sent one command to his network of smugglers and pirates: burn the choke points, cut the Accord off, and prepare the old warpaths. We follow the Starfire again. In the darkness of space, near the wreckage of the Cindergate massacre, a dormant ship stirred. Its engine was cracked, its crew long dead, but its AI, bound to an oath sworn to Ava's mother, came online. Voss protocols active. Searching for Ava Roslin. Initiate Operation Ash Resurgence. The past was no longer sleeping. It was rising. Aboard the Archangel, Kale brought her the final report. 5 systems siding with us. 8 more on the brink. Dozens of non-human crews offering passage, food, arms, even species who fought us before. He paused. And the Accord? They're pulling the home fleet, heading to the Centaur Reach. Looks like they're preparing for a total engagement. Ava looked out the viewplate, stars burning in silence, like sparks waiting to catch. "Let them come," she said. "We're not hiding anymore." She turned to her crew. "We're going to the Centaur Reach." Kale blinked. "That's madness. There's no battle plan." "There will be," she said, stepping forward, "because this time, the galaxy fights with us, not just for survival, for memory, for vengeance, for Earth." And the stars seemed to echo back her words. Like a vow, for Earth. We didn't plan to win. We planned to make sure they never forgot we fought. The Archangel streaked through the void, a spear of defiance cleaving toward the Centaur Reach, the Accord's most fortified line, the final threshold before the core worlds. Every species knew that name. Centaur Reach was not a place. It was a warning. A wall of gravitic minefields, mobile dreadnoughts, and artificial suns built to incinerate fleets before they could breach the heart of the Accord. It was where rebellions went to die, where empires made examples. No one had attacked it in 500 years, until now, inside the war room. Ava stood before a 3D schematic pulsing with red defenses and blue ghost signals, markers of old. Terran resistance cells once believed dead, now reigniting across the sector. Kale surveyed the holomap. "We have a quarter of their strength, a tenth of their firepower." Ava didn't look away. "Then we'll make them fight for every meter." He glanced at her, jaw clenched. "Even if it's suicide?" She nodded. "Especially if it is." Across the fractured reaches of space, the spark became a firestorm. Miners on Zalos 3 detonated their tunnels under an Accord garrison, burying entire platoons in flame and stone. On the frozen moons of Haydn's Wake, a human-engineered weather system reactivated and dropped an electromagnetic storm that blinded orbital scanners long enough for a refugee fleet to slip through. And on the hidden comm networks, a phrase began repeating, not a code, not an order, just a whisper, for Earth. In the black, just beyond the Centaur Reach, Ava's fleet emerged. The Archangel, still scarred from decades in hiding, the Vigilant Dawn, a Terran hospital ship now refitted with siege plasma, fragments of Earth's old navy painted over, rearmed by volunteers and remembered, and alongside them, vessels of alien design, Thelian biocruisers, Estradi Ember rigs, even a repurposed Balok dreadwheel whose captain owed his life to a long-dead Terran medic. Not a real fleet, not a conventional force, but a coalition bound by memory and fury. And now, facing them, the Accord unleashed its truth. 1,200 ships, planet crackers, intelligence-warping dreadnoughts. The Corps banner raised over all, and at its center, High Commander Vexaroon, the Butcher of Earth. He watched the ragtag fleet approach with cold precision. Let them speak their names in fire, he said, then silence them again. Eva stood in the Archangel's bridge as enemy signals locked on. Her hands were steady. Her voice was calm. This isn't about winning today, she told her crew. This is about telling the story ourselves. She tapped the final transmission beacon. Every ship across the sector received the signal. Human, alien, forgotten, hiding. Her face appeared across millions of screens. They buried the truth. They erased our world. But we are not ghosts. We are the fire you thought you smothered. You wanted the galaxy to forget Earth. Now, the galaxy fights with us. This is our stand. For the children lost in the ash. For the songs you silenced. And for the one name you never speak, human. Then she gave the order. All ships engage. The first volley cracked reality. The Archangel launched kinetic lances through the gravity wells, targeting the core command buoys. Explosions bloomed like novas across the void. The Vigilant Dawn broke formation to shield the Istrati lightship. Its hull split, but its cannons fired until they melted. Alien allies sacrificed without hesitation. Flanking human crews they once considered extinct myths, and inside every Terran ship, war songs played, not of hatred, but of remembrance of Earth, of oceans, cities, laughter, of home. Kale manned the flak tower, taking down a torpedo that would have vaporized their bridge. They're focusing fire on us. He growled. Good, Ava said. Keep them looking this way. Because somewhere behind the battlefield, Idris Harlan's infiltration fleet, riding the comet's tail and cloaked by a solar echo, slipped through the cracks in the reach. Their target wasn't victory. It was justice. On board the Accord flagship, Vexaroon narrowed his gaze. Send in the Black Fang units. No more games. Dozens of dark, skeletal cruisers deployed, designed for psychological warfare, stripping heat signatures, disabling emotion processing centers. They swarmed toward the rebel ships like a shadow wave. And still, Ava pressed forward. We hold the line, she commanded, even if no one remembers our names. One by one, their ships began to fall. Kale was bleeding, pinned under a collapsed console. I didn't think it would feel like this, he gasped. Like what? Like home was calling us back. Ava smiled through the fire. That's because it is. Suddenly, just as the Archangel's core began to breach, the stars behind the Accord fleet flared, and from the debris fields and forgotten dead zones, hundreds more vessels appeared, smugglers, traders, refugee convoys, decommissioned Accord captains who had once fought humans and now refused to silence their memories. The Terran diaspora had come. Idris's voice crackled through the channel. You always said we'd die screaming, but we're not here to die. We're here to remind them what we are. Ava gritted her teeth. Full burn, straight through their line. But we'll break apart. She grabbed the helm herself. Then we'll break together. The Archangel plowed forward like a wounded phoenix, shields failing, hull screaming. And through the chaos, the impossible happened. The Accord fleet buckled, not because of superior firepower, but because they'd never expected the dead to rise. They had studied Earth's weapons, but not its will. They counted on extinction, but humans didn't vanish. They waited, and now the galaxy would remember what that meant. When the sky burned red and the stars began to fall, humanity didn't run. We rose. The Archangel's hull was breaking apart. Deck 5 was gone, decompressed into the void. Dozens dead, dozens more still firing. Ava Roslin, her face bloodied, her voice hoarse, gripped the shattered command railing and pulled herself upright. Sparks rained down from the overhead relays like dying stars. Kill's voice came through static, barely audible. Shields gone, engines critical. But we're still transmitting, and that's what mattered. The transmission, the truth. Every second they stayed alive, Earth's memory grew louder. Below them, on the flanking edge of the Centaur Reach, Idris Harlan's infiltration fleet burst out of the storm line. Each ship cloaked in debris signatures, and armed with Terran-coded nanospores fractal tech humanity had perfected before the fall. The Accord flagship didn't even realize what was happening until Idris's crew was inside it, aboard the bridge of the Arium Sanctus. Vexaroon turned in disbelief as the outer hull ruptured inward and black-armored Terran units swarmed the control deck. He began, drawing a plasma dagger, but Idris didn't let him finish. He shot the dagger from Vex's hand and stepped forward, calm, scarred, unmoved. "You tried to erase us," he said coldly, "but you forgot to kill the storytellers." He lifted a pulse beacon, and the lights dimmed across every Accord channel. Idris's voice replaced system commands. "This is Idris Harlan, firstborn of Earth's last exodus. You've called us ghosts, vermin, errors in your census of the stars, but your fleets are breaking. Your truth is collapsing, and the last people you should have feared are standing in your throne room." He turned to Vec and whispered, "Only for him, you should have left us dead." Then Idris activated the failsafe. In orbit, the Accord fleet faltered. Command signals dropped. Flagships blinked off the network. The Archangel's battered systems flickered and lit green. Eva's voice rang out, enemy coordination failing. Fire everything. Kill didn't hesitate. The human fleet surged with renewed fury. Allies who had once only hidden or whispered now roared with defiance, unleashing payloads they had hidden for decades, sacrificing ships as battering rams, dragging Accord dreadnoughts into suns. Istrati's ship spun into a collision course with an enemy carrier. Its pilot's last broadcast was a simple phrase in broken Terran, "I remember the songs. I remember Earth." The Archangel broke through the final blockade. Behind it, the rest of the Terran fleet followed, bloodied, burning, and unstoppable. They had no homeworld, no empire, just each other, and that was enough. On board the Accord flagship, Idris stood over Vex's room, now bound in grav cuffs and stripped of his command sigil. Vex spat blood. "You think this changes anything? You're still animals. You're still forgotten." Idris looked down at him and said nothing. Instead, he turned to the communications officer, nodded once. She opened the final channel. Across the galaxy, on mining colonies, prison, moons, forgotten border posts, screens flickered, and a single video played, Earth, not as rubble, not as dust, but restored. Footage never before seen, preserved by the diaspora, hidden by those who escaped. Children laughing on grass, oceans stretching to eternity, fireworks over city, skylines, a planet of life. The galaxy gasped, because Earth wasn't a myth. It was real, and beautiful, and murdered by the very empire claiming galactic stewardship. Ava's voice followed the footage. "This was our home. You called. You as violent, primitive, dangerous. We were, when it was necessary. You burned our skies, so we lit yours in return. You tried to erase us. But now every world knows your lie. We were never gone. We were waiting." On dozens of Accord-controlled planets, riots erupted. Allied species began, tearing down Accord banners. Commanders resigned. Prisons opened. A revolution ignited not in blood, but in truth. In the void, the last Accord supercarrier turned, not to fight, but to flee. Their empire had never seen a war like this, because they had never fought an enemy that refused to die. Ava stood on the bridge of the Archangel, surrounded by smoke, ash, and light. The reach was broken. The Accord had fallen silent. She collapsed into the command chair, exhausted beyond anything words could hold. Kale sat beside her, one arm in a sling, the other gripping a data slate. He whispered, "We did it." Ava looked at the wreckage ahead, the stars behind, and the flames still burning across what had once been a wall no species dared challenge. "No," she said, "we remembered, and sometimes that's all it took." Somewhere in the ruins, a child of another world watched the broadcast and asked his mother, "Who were the humans?" She smiled, tears in her eyes, "The ones who didn't stay dead." That day, the galaxy learned what it means to be human. The war did not end with the Accord surrender. Empires rarely collapsed cleanly. What followed was slower, harder, the unraveling of a lie woven into generations. Worlds that had only known subjugation now faced the terrifying promise of freedom. And the word whispered across 1,000 fractured channels was no longer Earth. It was human. The species they were taught to fear, the ghosts they were told were gone. Now, their name was carved into starlight and echoed in revolution. Ava Roslin stood before a gathering of liberated leaders on Helia Prime, where the Accord's first edict had once been written in flame. She wore no armor, no medals, only the black and crimson patch of the Archangel, frayed at the edges, and still blood-stained from reachfall. They expected a speech. What she gave was memory. "I was 6 when they bombed New Vancouver. I remember the fire in the sky. I remember silence, no broadcasts, no answers. just the sound of wind scraping ash over bone. She looked at them, 1,000 species, some still uncertain, others defiant now. I swore that I'd make them remember us, not for vengeance, not even for justice, a pause, a breath, but because the dead deserved their names spoken aloud. Idris Harlan did not return to Earth, though his shuttle flew over the ruins. He walked alone across the cracked remnants of what was once the Terran Assembly Hall, now barely a ribcage of stone and shattered steel. A single tree, twisted but living, grew between the slabs of scorched marble. He reached down, brushed dirt away from the base. The old words were barely legible. Ad astra per humana. To the stars, through humanity. He didn't weep. He just sat there for hours in the silence, listening to the wind. And when he rose again, he planted a beacon, not for war, not for remembrance, a map, so no child of Earth, born in exile or shadow, would ever forget where it began. The accord fractured. Some remnants fled to deep space. Others begged forgiveness. Some were granted it. Most were not. Tribunals were held in orbit above ruined planets. Crimes cataloged. Victims named. The galaxy watched, and humans didn't gloat. They testified, with voices that trembled but never broke. Kale, who had once only been a voice in the static, stood beside Eva on the Galactic Conclave stage when the Provisional Charter was rewritten. He read aloud the new final clause, "No species shall be erased." A simple line, but it echoed like thunder through the chamber. The Archangel, to damage the fight again, was not scrapped. Instead, she was anchored above the planet Solace, in a peaceful orbit, her guns silent. Students and travelers from every system visited her now, to walk her scorched halls, to read the names etched on her walls, not just of humans, but of every species that stood beside them in reachfall. They called it the Vessel of Memory. And what of humanity? They never rebuilt Earth, not fully. The damage was too deep, the scars too wide, but they didn't need to, because humanity was no longer a place. It was a people, scattered across the stars, unyielding. Some say they became wanderers, never again anchoring to a single homeworld. Others claim a new Terran council was formed aboard the Vigilant Dawn, a ship larger than any city, always moving, always watching. But the truth? No one's quite sure, because humans didn't need to rule the galaxy. They only needed the galaxy to remember. One cycle later, a monument was unveiled at the edge of the Veiled Crescent, where the first refugee fleet had disappeared so long ago. A simple obsidian pillar, carved by hand. No lights, no digital archive, only words. We were broken, but we were never beaten. And beneath it, smaller, the last species that made humans angry. We don't talk about them. That line became legend. Children whispered it in schoolyards. Commanders quoted it before last stands. It became a warning and a promise, because somewhere, in the silence between stars, the truth still lived. Humanity was not the strongest species, nor the most advanced. They just never knew how to give up. Epilogue. An alien child sat on her father's lap, watching the final recording from the Archangel. Eva Roslin stood there in flickering light, soot on her face, blood on her hands, smiling. "I'm not asking you to fear us," she said, "only to remember what we became when we had nothing left." The screen faded. Silence fell. "Papa?" the girl asked. "Were humans real?" The father didn't answer. He only nodded, solemn, proud. "Oh, yes," he said. "They were real, and we still carry their fire."